Good morning. It's Tuesday, March 10th, 2015. This is Tech Talk Today, episode 142. I just love that number for some reason. Probably a lot of reasons. We have a lot of stuff to cover today. We have some heavy stuff, some really heavy stuff up front, a little bit of watch follow-up from yesterday's watch shenanigans, and then some Tizen news we're going to end on. So a pretty broad spectrum of news stories for our first episode of the week. So to help me dig through all of it, I'll bring in our Mumble Room. Time-appropriate greetings, Mumble Room.
Hello.
Greetings.
Morning.
Howdy, guys. Good to have you here. Let's start with something that I'll be tracking for Unfilter later this week. We're going to start with the heavy stuff first, and that is, of course, going to be NSA and CIA. First up from the NSA, we learned that the Wikimedia Foundation has filed a suit against the NSA and the Department of Justice. And the reason why I want to bring this to your attention is you've heard a lot about phone metadata in the news. You've heard a lot about stopping phone metadata. You've heard a lot about where phone metadata should be stored, i.e. the government or at the companies that like the phone companies themselves, and then give the NSA a standardized way to access it. One thing that hasn't really been discussed is the 702 program, which by a lot of estimations is much more egregious because it collects 3 days of internet traffic, period, full stop. In the U.S., 3 days of all of your internet traffic are captured, and then they use a system called XKeyscore to go through and pull out interesting bits and store them in a database. Those interesting bits are something like, oh, you're using encryption, or a keyword is matched, or a website that's under watch, or your IP address is in a range of IP addresses that need to be monitored. When those things are flagged, then they're stored for long-term storage. The 3-day buffer is rolling and it's dropped. And that is done by attaching actual fiber line splitters at the ISPs. The fiber is a light signal. That's what's so amazing about it, is they're actually able to split the light signal by not slowing down the original transmission by doing the collection and able to process it at their own speed. It's pretty genius. And the problem is all of the discussion in the public has just been around the phone metadata and not around the 702 bulk collection program, which I think anybody who follows technology would argue general IP traffic is going to be the way of the future for everything, from phone calls to TV media and downloading books. I mean, it's there for most of us now. The general public's already on their way. And in some ways, phone metadata will be much less relevant in 30 years, and collecting all of the internet will be much more relevant in 30 years. So it's pretty critical that we zone in on what the U.S. public is comfortable with here. So Wikimedia Foundation is filing a suit against the NSA and the Department of Justice of the United States. The lawsuit challenges the NSA's mass surveillance program, and specifically its large-scale search and seizure of internet communications, frequently referred to as upstream surveillance. They say our aim in filing this suit is to end the mass surveillance program in order to protect the rights of our users around the world. We are joined by 8 other organizations and represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, a.k.a. the ACLU. So this is big, and hopefully this will bring this aspect of the NSA surveillance program back into the spotlight. They managed to change the discussion away after the initial Snowden leaks, after Greenwald published them. But hopefully this will start that conversation up again. Mumble Room, any thoughts on the bulk collection program and this lawsuit?
Egregious.
Yes, it does feel quite egregious. Let's talk about the next thing then. So this is, like I said, the heavy stuff at the top of the show. Speaking of Glenn Greenwald, he works for The Intercept now, and he and others over there have published a pretty big article this morning, and they've called it I Spy, how the CIA started a campaign to crack the iPhone and the iPad. And it's really interesting. And guess what? It comes from some Edward Snowden leaks. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So I went through and I pulled out a few interesting tidbits. It's a pretty long article, so I will link the whole thing into the show notes if you want to read all of it. Oh, and my highlights aren't showing up. That's egregious too. Hold on, let me refresh this and see if my highlights show up, because I went through. There's some pretty good tidbits in here. No. Well, hold on. I have another alternative means. I'll pull out. So I'll link to the full article. But here we go. Here's the tidbits I wanted to share with you. So the CIA launched a conference that they held it at their buddies. So when the CIA wants to launch a conference to talk about cracking American-made software and hardware devices like the iPhone and Android devices, they have to hold the conference somewhere. You got to get all these people in, all of these contractors that are going to get these big fatty contracts, all these CIA operatives, the NSA people you're going to be working with. You got to get them all in one place, and you need a big room. Somebody had to volunteer the space. Of course, the CIA's good buddies at Lockheed Martin went ahead and made some space available to bring all of these different people together to figure out how to crack American products right under the roof of Lockheed Martin, which, oh, by the way, makes 85% of their profits from defense contracts. So they were all more than happy to oblige. So this started started happening around 2013. According to a classified budget, U.S. intelligence agencies were creating new capabilities against dozens of commercially produced security products, including those made by American companies. They were looking to seek out vulnerabilities. Now, the documents don't really go into how successful they were targeting Apple's encryption mechanisms, nor do they provide any detail about the specific use of which agencies use which vulnerabilities, but they do shed light on the ongoing campaign against defeating the tech giant's efforts, aka Apple's products, and in turn, getting to the customer's private data. In fact, when Apple would release a new product, they'd have a scramble team try to figure out how to crack it. In the documents, ranging from 2010 to 2012, the researchers appear particularly intent on extracting the encryption keys that prevent unauthorized access to data stored, and the firmware, to verify the signature on the firmware before it runs on Apple's products. A presenter, one of the contractors pitching to the CIA, said that we believe we could whack, that was their term, whack Xcode. And if we whack Xcode, we could implant malware there. That way when developers hook up their devices, we'll then transfer it onto the device. The problem was Apple did this really obnoxious thing recently where they only started distributing Xcode through the App Store. So now the CIA had a big problem because that's much harder to give somebody a bogus version of Xcode when you can only get it from the App Store. So they have to now figure out how to replace Xcode on the Mac, but they're working on that. The researchers also boasted they discovered a way to manipulate Xcode so that it would just become a conduit, so they could send out future things to it when the developers were working on the devices. Now, this really all started back in 2012, focus on the Apple devices, but documents go back as early as 2009 where they started working on this kind of get-together. They have I highlighted what they call it in here, like a jambalaya or something. They call it I forget. They have such a great name for the meeting, but I can't find it now. It's all in the article by The Intercept. It's a really good write-up, and it shows you some of the actions that we've seen Apple take publicly now. If you look at this article, at some of them in retrospect, it looks like maybe they were trying to prevent some of this, like moving Xcode into the App Store. Were they intentionally trying to make it harder for the NSA to do this, the CIA to do this? This is also one of the first really big CIA disclosures we've gotten from the Snowden documents. Researchers also claim they successfully modified the OS X updater. Now, we don't know which version of OS X. This is from a couple of years ago. And they could use it to deliver a keylogger to the laptops and desktops. And I mean, this is really the problem with the Apple ecosystem, is Apple can continue to make these steps, but because they have less devices and less software diversity, it's a lot easier to target that. It's a lot easier. Fragmentation sometimes has its advantages. Mumble Room, any thoughts on the CIA going after American products like this?
Well, they have a charter that they're not supposed to be targeting Americans.
I thought so. I thought that's how it worked, but I guess they could make foreign terrorists buy American laptops. I don't know, or iPhones. And of course, don't forget about the children. As we're going to be
about the children,
we're going to be talking about watches, and these watches are going to be collecting a lot of information about us, and they're going to be getting more and more sensors than the phones have ever had. So it's interesting to think about this stuff and how they go after these devices and proactively try to crack them. So if you'd like, please go read that Intercept article. It was by Jeremy Shahill and Josh Beagley, and it's a great write-up, and they do some good work, and it's all stuff cited directly from the Edward Snowden docs. All right, speaking of watches, you might have watched Apple's keynote yesterday. We didn't do live coverage here because I figured that was probably covered in a lot of places. And in yesterday's Coder Radio, I talked about my experience with the Pebble Steel and what I think some actual legitimate use cases are for smart app watches, and maybe where some developers should be focusing their attention if they want to make money building smart apps for watches. Yeah, really, I know it sounds crazy, but after using the Pebble for a little while, I'm starting to see the reason for it. And so I did watch Apple's watch release with some interest, because I've over the weekend sort of developed a much stronger interest in smart watches. One thing I didn't see mentioned in the keynote, but it seems like a pretty important point, the Apple Watch battery will be not only about user replaceable, but replaceable. You probably have to take it to the Apple Store, knowing Apple. But this seemed like a big surprise to me, which I got to speculate here. If the battery is replaceable, I also then wonder if the system on a chip is replaceable. Because if you remember the way the Apple Watch is designed, the entire components are in a self-enclosed system on a chip that is sealed completely. So it's water proof, or resistant, I guess. And it seems like if the battery could come out, that piece could come out too, because it could be completely replaceable if you made the new one the same exact shape and size. And it's all one individual component. And so that, to me, with the battery replaceable, I wonder if somebody ends up buying a $10,000 Apple Watch, if they won't be able to replace the battery and the system on a chip in a like a $200 service call to the Apple Store. And maybe Apple isn't saying much about it because they don't know 100% if they're going to be able to pull it off. But technically, it should be possible. An Apple spokesperson did confirm to TechCrunch that the battery is indeed replaceable, but no word on the price yet. Apple estimates the battery life cycle to be 3 years on the Apple Watch. I don't know about that, but I want to. Here, I'll do a quick take right here. Any Mumble or Mini takeaways from the Apple Watch announcement yesterday? Of course, the price, right? That's a little high.
No. I mean, if you're paying so much for it, you got to hope that you can get some more usage out of it. And I mean, I guess if you can upgrade the hardware components, I mean, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, so here we go. I'm looking for, I think iMore has it here. So, no, they don't. There is, inside the Apple Watch, there is a system on a chip that just comes right out. And I wish I could find a picture. Of course, Apple doesn't make it very easy to do that. But it's, I don't know. You know what? So none of us have gotten our hands on the Apple Watch, but yeah, like the tech industry says, we got our first hands on, and Nilay Patel for The Verge has his, and he says actually it's a little confusing to use. I'll play his take on it, and you can see what he says. Go, Nilay. Boom.
Hey, we're here at Apple's Spring Forward event in San Francisco, California, and I am wearing the Apple Watch on my wrist. This is a 42 millimeter version. It's the full Apple Watch, so this one is $599. And this is my first time using one that's actually working and getting to play around with all the different interaction modes. So, for example, you can swipe down from the top to get your notifications. You can scroll through them with your finger, but that's kind of twitchy, so that's where the digital crown comes in. Trying to actually spin it with your thumb is sort of hokey, but if you just take one finger and move up and down on it, it actually feels pretty good. And I found that this is got a little bit more resistance than the original Apple Watch demo that we tried last year. So I'm pretty happy with it. If you hit it, you go back home, and you can hit it again to go to your apps. You can scroll around with your apps with your finger. You can also zoom in and out with the digital crown. And there's just a few apps loaded up on here. There's one.
You know, I'll say, I look at it, it does look pretty nice. I'm surprised how much it just looks like a screen on a wrist, but at the same time, it looks like the best screen on a wrist I've seen so far. The Pebble, the new Pebble Time, though, is pretty good looking as well. You can watch the full video. It's a little choppy on playback here, so I'll let you finish it on your own. And then before we move off of the Apple stuff yesterday, they did make a bunch of news, too, with their ultra-thin MacBook with Retina display, just called the MacBook. Don't call it a MacBook Air. It's got a 2304 by 1440, 16 by 10 aspect ratio screen. It's 2 pounds, all metal, new type of keys, one connector. Just one freaking connector. Also, they say silent, which is pretty cool. One freaking connector, Mumble Room, the USB Type-C. No bloody... Oh, I'm sorry, there's also... I guess there's a headphone port. No power adapter, no Ethernet adapter, no networking adapter, no other USB ports. Just one port. What do you think? Is Apple gone crazy, or is this going to work?
I think for the average consumer, yes, but for anybody who is an enthusiast, hell no.
So they say USB-C has enough bandwidth to do video, to have a USB port or USB hub. You could hang a gigabit Ethernet adapter off there. Okay, here's the advantage to USB-C. You ready for this one? For the first time I can ever remember, Apple now has a standardized power connector on their laptop. You could go out and buy any USB-C device and plug it into that. If other PC manufacturers adopted this to charge the laptop, even if they kept all the other ports, but they use this to charge the laptop, we could have a universal power plug for all laptops like we kind of have now with mini USB or whatever it is, the micro USB and phones, except for Apple's. But in this case, Apple's the first one rolling out. I mean, they don't own that. Right? They patented the MagSafe connector. That's not a MagSafe. That's just a straight-up USB-C connector that anybody that licenses that spec can make. And it's not Apple spec. And if just Lenovo and HP did that, That would be a huge frickin' deal. I don't know about just only port. That seems crazy. And the other thing is, this is truly the beginning of the merging of the iPad platform and the MacBook platform. This is an iPad hybrid. When they move the Mac platform over to ARM, they'll also only have one plug. Just like the iPad, you've got a headphone jack and a USB port, or in the iPad's case, a Lightning. And I'm almost surprised Apple didn't go Lightning, to be honest with you. I mean, they own Lightning. Lightning is a solid connector. In fact, some would argue it's probably a better connector than USB-C. USB-C, however, obviously has many more advantages, like industry-wide support. My mind is blowing right now. I mean, as somebody who has supported MacBooks and had MacBooks for forever, since they were called MacBooks, since they were called PowerBooks, Apple has never used a charger that I could just go to Best Buy and buy that I could also then use on another laptop. So I like that a lot. I say good for them. Hopefully the rest of the industry follows suit. And the other thing, remember I just said it's kind of like the merging of the iPad and the MacBook Air. I have right here, this is the internals of the new MacBook. That tiny board up there is the entire motherboard, everything. The USB controller, the CPU, the video card, the PCI bus, everything. That second component down below is the trackpad. The trackpad assembly is bigger than all of the other internal components on this laptop. And doesn't that look exactly like the insides of what a tablet looked like? And the rest is all battery. 9 hours of wireless web, 10 hours of movie playback, 2 pounds, all metal, big-ass trackpad, LED lit keyboard, and each key individually lit. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And they managed to use less power to light the display, too. I just think it's pretty weird that that's what the new modern quote-unquote laptop has been reduced down to, is just these small little components right here. It's pretty powerful. All right, let's talk about Tizen. So we talked about watches, we talked about Apple, let's talk about Tizen. On the open source side of things today, Russia is willing to pay Tizen developers to create more apps for the Tizen platform. What? Yeah, well, it actually makes some sense if you think about it. Russia wants to support the Samsung-led Tizen open source effort and also Yalla Sailfish OS, which has been developed in Europe, like Finland, and is an extension of the open source MiGo project. Tweeting from a conference over the weekend, Nikola Nikolov, I think is how you say his name, the Russian Federation's Minister of Communications and Mass Communications, called for the demonopolization of the global IT ecosystem and expressed support for the Linux-based Tizen OS, tweeting a hands-on photo of himself using the new open-source operating system. That's pretty cool. So there is the head of Russia's Federation of Communications and Mass Communications using a Tizen phone when he tweets. I think that's kind of a big deal. They go on to say that he retweeted a news story about the launch of Ubuntu's smartphone. I think they're also very excited about Ubuntu Touch, so that's pretty neat. So about the money. It's not clear how much money the Russian Federation intends to throw behind the mobile market's non-U.S. underdogs via app developer grants at this point, but don't get too excited because the grants are going to be for Russian developers only. But pretty cool to see Russia thrown down. It wouldn't it be interesting if one of Canonical's allies in the adoption of Ubuntu Touch is Vladimir Putin? I think that'd be kind of funny. And it would make a lot of sense that maybe Russia and China and maybe India would really like to see these mobile operating systems take off. And that could be really great for guys like Canonical and Tizen and Mozilla, guys and gals. Mumble Room, any thoughts before we wrap up the news today on the Tizen? Anybody a Tizen user in the Mumble Room by some rare chance? No. I've tried it. I have tried it. You guys are all a bunch of Android and iOS users. That's cool. That's cool. You guys need to expand your mind. Try out multi-ROM. Expand your mind. Yeah, there you go. So Russia, we'll follow that story if anything actually comes of it. I don't know if we'll ever see anything come of it, but if it does, I'll let you know. Well, we have an ending video today that I'm really excited about. iMacan was a champion in the chat room this morning, collected me some great end of show clips this week. So all of the videos this week are brought to you by iMacan in the chat room. So everybody give him a high five. Before I run, I want to give a plea, a beg. Please go to teespring.com/Linux and help us fund our Linux Fest Northwest initiative. We've sold 35 shirts, which is not very good. I was hoping for a lot more than that. And so we've launched the Linux Action Show all black and white logo, gorgeous logo, which we specifically designed for printing on shirts. We've got the long sleeve, the hoodie, kids shirts, t-shirts, in some great colors. The blue seems to be really popular this time around, and I agree, it's sharp. I love the long sleeves too. I know it's some places starting to get warm, some places it's still quite cold. We have this nice red, this dark deep red long sleeve shirt. I'm really excited about that. I'm going to be getting some of those. Teespring.com/Linux. Get the Linux Action Show shirt. The proceeds here are going to fund us flying out hosts and producers for Linux Fest Northwest. We want to go all out and produce a bunch of local content. While everybody's here, we're going to do shows in studio. We're going to go out to dinner, have team meetings, just all the kind of stuff we need to do as groups that work together need to get together from time to time because we're all over the place. But it's going to be a lot of money, and Jupiter Broadcasting, is going to try to help them get out here. Or maybe, really what we want to be able to do is pay for their flight and room. But that's going to be thousands of dollars. And we won't raise it all by selling shirts, but we're trying to. That way you guys get something you can, if you're going to the fest, you can wear it to the fest, which is super cool. We've got a bunch of different styles you can choose from. The tee is basically we're selling it at cost because we still want to see you guys get as many as you can. So if you want to pick up a couple to support us, we definitely appreciate it. Teespring.com/Linux. Go check it out. Really big thank you. Also, long-term support over at patreon.com/today. Not only will we be using that to also help fund the Linux Fest Northwest initiatives, but future fests as well. Patreon.com/today really is going to be a huge help too. This is sort of like the point of the year where Linux Action Show gets crazy, becomes a full-time gig, and we really go all out. And so your support means a really big deal to us. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today. I'll be back tomorrow. Won't have a show on Thursday. I've decided to take the day off because we pre-recorded TechSnap. And if I don't come in, that means I don't have any shows. And that's very rare that happens on a Thursday. And I'll probably do something very boring, like clean the studio up. But I've decided to take Thursday off, but I'll be back on Friday. So this week, it's today, Wednesday, and Friday. So we still have a couple more days. So join me, won't you? jblive.tv, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar for your local time. And don't forget to make the show even better at our subreddit, techtalktoday.reddit.com. So we've been talking about watches, and Imacon helped me collect a bunch of commercials that'll help us go back in time and look at fads of previous watches. They seem to go through cycles. I'm not saying the current cycle's a bust, but I'm saying sometimes we've been there, done that before, just with different words and different types of technology. This one's a little long, but it's classic. See you back here tomorrow, everybody.
Announcing an amazing electronic breakthrough. A watch so unbelievable, so incredible, so revolutionary that it goes beyond time. Introducing the Multicron 20-function calculator watch. It's so advanced it replaces all of this. Imagine every digital feature you could ever want is now available in this one single timepiece. Plus, there's a special 21st feature that will astound you, but we're saving that one for last. Multicron is a full-function calculator that adds, subtracts, multiplies, and divides. It has a memory and even a constant. The Multicron is a stopwatch and lap timer that gives you hundredth of a second accuracy. Of course, it's also an everyday watch that shows the hour, the minute, and the exact second. It displays AM or PM or 24-hour military time. It gives you the month, the date, and the day of the week, and it has a nightlight for easy viewing. The Multicron has a daily alarm, or can be set a week in advance. It even has an hourly chime if you want it. And now that astounding feature 21, the price. The Multicron is not $100, not $75, not $50, not even $30. It's yours for the unbelievable low price of only $19.99. That's right, $19.99, and it's guaranteed for 1 full year. But you must act now. Here's how to order.
COD and credit card customers call toll-free 1-800-453-4808. To save COD charges, use your credit card to send $19.99 to Calculator Watch, Box 4999, Chicago. Imagine every single digital feature you could ever want is now together in one amazing new watch. Order your Multicron now.